Uh, some time back, I caught a YouTube clip where you were talking about taking refuge in the now. And I was going through a particularly difficult time, and it really just stopped me in my tracks, and some of that heaviness of what I'd been feeling was lifted. But as I contemplate that, and I've watched that clip several times, I still feel like I'm missing something, because it feels like there's like a doing of, but I don't quite understand what it means fully. I wondered if you could just say more about that. And this was, by the way, in response to someone's question about they were dealing with fear. And you used the analogy of, what is it about vacations that we like so much? Because we are very much in the moment. We don't have to worry about the past. We don't have any concerns about the future. So he says, you don't have to go on vacation. You can take refuge in the now. But I feel like I'm just not quite understanding it, because it seems like there might be some kind of doing that might be a great coping mechanism for difficult feelings. But can you say more about that?
Yes, when we go on a vacation, we very often want to go on a vacation in order to get away from our present circumstance. It's like a relief from our present circumstance. In other words, the impulse to go on vacation, not suggesting there's anything wrong with going on vacation, but the impulse is to get away from what is currently present and replace it with something which is going to happen in the future. So it's a movement away from our current experience. And this is not just a desire to go on vacation, but this is how most people deal with suffering. If you think when we're suffering in any way, there is usually some impulse in us to go towards something or someone that is not present. So we might go towards an object or a substance or an activity or a practice or a relationship. It's always a movement from our current experience to something or someone, with the hopes that thing will provide relief from the suffering. That's the normal way people relieve suffering. So what I don't remember the clip you're referring to, but what I'm sure I was referring to was that if we really want relief from suffering, we shouldn't move away from it into some kind of objective experience, but we should go deeply into it, that what we long for resides at the very heart of our suffering, or we could say just the other side, just underneath it. We have to go through it, not away from it. The peace, the resolution we long for resides, let's say, just underneath it, or at the very heart of it. So when I said take refuge in the now, and another way of expressing that would be, don't escape into thinking. Escape into thinking is the subtlest form of reaching for an object. It's not physically reaching for a substance or a person, but our thought takes us away from the now into some imagined past or future in which we seek relief. So it's like, when I say come into the now, it's like, another way of saying that would be, imagine you're a newborn infant. You don't have a past to refer to, and you're not able to think. You come to your present experience. So everyone could ask themselves this question now. And this really will only work if you're feeling some level of suffering now. So just imagine that, just to try and evoke some subtle quality of boredom or irritation or sadness, and then ask yourself, without reference to thought or memory, how would I know that I'm suffering? Without reference to thought or memory, would I conceptualize my current experience as suffering? No, the suffering is not in the actual experience itself. The suffering is in our desire to escape from it. So if we go in the opposite direction, if we so fully accept the current experience so that there's no impulse to move away from it, right there, and the way I evoke this feeling of acceptance, because sometimes if we feel that the experience is very painful, we feel, I can't accept this. So that's why I take the image of the newborn child. The newborn child cannot conceptualize its experience, and it has no past. The newborn child only knows its current experience. So the purpose of using the image of the newborn child is to bring us back to the inescapable now, our current experience, which without reference to thought or memory, we wouldn't know we were suffering. It's not possible to suffer in the now. There is no suffering in the now. Our suffering is contained in the distance between now and where I want to be. Or suffering is the tension between now and not now, where I want to be. But if we take away the possibility of where I want to be, by taking away the possibility of thought or memory, we imagine we're the newborn infant, all we can experience is this experience. There is no suffering there. There may be a certain intensity of sensation, but that sensation is not psychological suffering. So that's why I said take the place of peace, the place of refuge, is not in an escape from the now, even into some beautiful spiritual samadhi or no, the real refuge from our suffering is at the very heart of our suffering, or we could say just underneath our suffering. That is the place of peace. Any attempt at alleviating our suffering through moving away from our experience will at best only be a temporary resolution. But as soon as that object disappears, the suffering will come back. And that requires courage, real courage, because the impulse, when we are suffering deeply, the impulse, there's such a strong impulse in us to flee the suffering. I just want to get out of it. The object, a fridge, a YouTube clip, a non-dual YouTube clip. Non-dual YouTube clips are particularly dangerous because they come with a kind of legitimate a label that suggests that they are a legitimate avoidance of suffering. I'm not suggesting there's anything wrong with the occasional YouTube clip, but actually at a certain point we should even deny ourselves the possibility of a non-dual YouTube clip or a non-dual book. At a certain point, I'm not suggesting non-dual books are not valid, that they are, but at some point even these can be subtle ways of avoiding our suffering, kind of spiritual ways of avoiding our suffering, and it would be more courageous at that moment to say, no, I'm not going to move away even into some spiritual activity. I'm not even going to meditate, because of meditating, why do I want to meditate? To avoid my suffering. What would be truly meditation at that moment would be to not allow ourselves any avenue of escape, and to come fully to go deeper into the experience itself until there were no possibility of escaping. And right there at the heart of that experience, we would find the peace we were longing for. And as I say, it involves courage, because sometimes the feelings are so intense that the impulse to flee them is so strong, and we have to sometimes sit ourselves down and say, no, I've been fleeing from this feeling for so long. I only ever get temporary relief from it. I want lasting relief from it. And then we have to have the courage to turn around, to face the feeling, to bring it closer, to go right into the heart of it.